everybody. Welcome back to Best Books Ever. I am Tyler, and today, starting a new book, right? This quest in these little secret projects by Brandon Sanderson. We got the next one we're doing, Yumi and the Nightmare Painter by Brandon Sanderson, as stated. Chapters 1 through 17, first couple parts of the book right here. So far, just like initial thoughts, very, very fun. Obviously, very different vibes from the first one, from Tress. Tress was, this girl who was alone, but she was seemingly content, and she was in love. That love was taken away from her, and, now she became a pirate. This one, we have two main characters, so that's fun, which, if you look at the book cover, I guess it makes a lot of sense. But we got two main characters, and they seem to be very alone and very just sort of like accepting of their role in life and sort of like, just the cards that were dealt to them. But I think them coming together, even the little bit that we've seen so far, I think that is really starting to open up their eyes, regarding their lives, what they actually think about them, what they want to do with them. Um, a lot of like internal reflection sort of stuff. So, chock full of stuff to talk about today. Because it was a lot. It was almost like 200 pages. So let's just start, right? Start from the beginning instead of the end. Because normally we start with the end, but since this is the start of a book, I feel like we kind of go chronological. I feel like that makes more sense. Where do we begin? Okay, spirits. Spirits are a fun idea. We already have some sort of stuff like that here and there. I mean, even if we're not going to go anywhere else in the Cosmere. Oh yeah, just real quick too, if you're somehow, that's like the first episode. We did just do Tress, which is the first secret project, which these aren't connected in any way, besides the fact that it is part of the Cosmere. If you look at the title right there, you'll see a Cosmere novel. Cosmere is the universe that Brandon Sanderson writes. The majority of his books, I would say, or at least the ones that he's more famous for. And it is a shared universe, so that's a lot of fun. So even outside of that, though, in terms of spirits, we have seen a little bit of that in Tress. If you want to sort of equate that to like I was gonna say fungus. That's not the word. Not pollen. God, we just read that book. How did I already forget what it was called? Spores. The spores, which aren't really spirits, but they do like interact in certain ways, and we did sort of see evidence that maybe they have some sort of will, like even when like Tress was like sort of kind of controlling them, it's like, ooh, what's going on there? And then we do have otherworldly stuff as well. We saw a few characters that were seemingly from another planet, so those sort of ideas are not new to us. But the way they handle them here, and I think that's something that I really love, that if y'all are just reading this book with me, or if you did do Tress and you haven't read any of the other Cosmere stuff, you should definitely give it a shot, because at its base, a lot of this stuff is very, very similar. Like even magic systems and fantasy, a lot of them share a lot of similar qualities, because there's only so much that the human mind can think of, and then not only think of, but then make it make sense to a reader. But it's always those little tiny additions or the little tiny differences that make it really fun. So with spirits being here, it's like, okay, cool. We sort of seen stuff like that before, but with these, it's like, okay, you kind of have to like make them want to come out and help you, which is you're sort of coercing them, but it is a very like mutually beneficial relationship. And then also the way they help, they always split in half. I know that was a big thing that was pointed out. They always split in half, and they typically like turn into something. It's not just like a wish of like, oh, I wish I was rich or something, and somehow it had, it's not like a genie. It's more so like, do you need something? So like most people use it to get like little like light balls, so they're not in darkness, I guess. A lot of people use it for, there's like these like flying machines sort of thing that help with like crops and getting from place to place. So I thought that was really cool to sort of introduce that, and the way they did it too, of just, this is a normal thing. It's a very special thing. It's a very honored thing, but it is a pretty normal thing for these chosen to go town to town and try to get as many of these spirits as they possibly can to help out their, any sort of like big issues that their town is having. So I thought that was really cool. Some other stuff that was mentioned that I really enjoyed was, they mentioned light weaving again. Now, trying my hardest to keep it inside of what we have read so far. I don't want to really go outside of that. But even if we just stay inside, we've heard of light weaving in Tress. In Tress, there was light weaving mentioned with the sorceress. It was brief, but we did see it mentioned of like that was some form of her powers that she was able to use, which is like when she like made things appear as something else. It's sort of like a cloak sort of thing, which makes sense because the way it's mentioned here is the narrator, which we'll get to in a moment, mentions it regarding design, and how design has some sort of light weaving or light weaving adjacent type magic that is happening to her or it. I guess it's a her, even though they do say that they're pretending to be a woman. But yeah, so that's how she looks the way she does. So just wanted to point that out in case anyone missed it, because I think it's one of the beautiful things about having something like the Cosmere and, someone who seems to be executing on it in a very, very, I was going to say sophisticated. That's not the word I wanted to use, but, someone who's actually going through with it and it isn't just like half done, right? Is you get these little connections, and there's a lot of them. Obviously, if you read everything, you get all of them, but even just these little ones between one book to another, it's not spanning everything. It's not like, it's just like, hey, you remember light weaving? Talked about it in Tress. There's some connection here. These things do cross over with each other, and it makes you think. Because another crossover is Hoid. Now, when I started Tress, I said, is that Hoid? It is Hoid. How big of a character is he going to be? Turns out he was a huge character in Tress. I've already mentioned a little bit of like his appearances in other books, which honestly, Tress is like the most we ever see Hoid in the Cosmere. So like, obviously part of me feels bad about spoiling anything here and there, but it's like, talking about Hoid, I don't think is a spoiler because Tress is literally the most prominent he's ever been. Other Cosmere readers might disagree with that, but I mean, Hoid was here for basically the entire book. He was a sidekick character for the entire novel that we just finished. So with this one, I'm interested to see if he is. I mean, he's already not been for the first two parts because we're mushing these two parts together for this this episode. But yeah, I mean, he does seem to be important. We'll get to that in a moment, but it's interesting to me because when these secret projects were announced, I don't think it was revealed that, hey, Hoid's going to be in all of them, and he's going to be the narrator for all the books. I can't speak to Secret Project number 2, which is the one we're not doing because it's not Cosmere. But I assume since it's not Cosmere, he's not going to be a part of it because he's not part of that universe, But so far, we're 2 for 2. We do have the next one, which is the Sunlit Man. That's the next and final secret project, sort of. So I wonder if that one's also by Hoid. Yeah, that's very interesting. But a fun thing there for Hoid to be a part of this one as well. Definitely not as prominent as the last one, but we'll see. We'll see. Like I said, we'll get to it in a moment about how important Hoid could be, given one of the last conversations we see in this section. Yes. Oh man, there's so much intertwined ideas. Okay. This will probably cause an avalanche of Yumi, but Yumi does such a good job that it's almost a bad thing. She summons 37 spirits. Normally, you're lucky to summon, I think, 6 is what she said. And the amount of people that needed help that they gathered was way more than 6 because they're like, well, we want to get more just in case. It was 24, I believe. So it caused them to panic and be like, we need to get like 13 more people. Like, we have 13 spirits that can be used. Like, we need to start rounding people up. Like, hey, we never could have guessed that someone could have summoned 37. So, I mean, I guess I'll just go off on it because this is gonna cause a whole thing. But we'll get into Yumi. So that moment, I think, is reflective of pretty much her entire life as a chosen, right? Her whole thing with being chosen, what it means with like you being a vessel for the spirits or whatever. It's something we've seen before many times. Not this specifically, but this sort of setup where you have a character who has a very important role. Usually it's like they're next in line to be king or queen or something, like that sort of power, that sort of like reverence. And it's great, right? You get to live your whole life getting served upon. I don't know. Servants doing their thing. You never have to worry about food or shelter or money or danger, really, anything like that. So it's great. So from an outside perspective, you live literally the best life that anyone could possibly live. But then you get inside the head of that character and you see, oh, they don't really get to live their life. Again, to try to equate it to a book we've read before, we just read Tress. That is somewhat of how Charlie felt, right? Where he was Prince, he was like next in line or whatever, and he didn't love it. He didn't love it. He liked a lot about it. It didn't seem like he was like depressed or anything, but there were decisions that he wanted to make, and they unfortunately weren't his to make. That sort of spawned kind of why the whole book happened, in a way. So this is sort of what we're seeing with Yumi as well, where it's like, it seems like, and I do have a note about this too, about that specifically, but it's like, oh yeah, Yumi is constantly trying to convince herself being chosen is great. And it's just an unfortunate thing because I think she does truly, feel honored to have the honor of being chosen and being able to do all these things and help all these people. That's great. But we see as the book goes on, I mean, very early on even, that she doesn't love it. And I feel like one of the first thoughts she has to us as the reader is like, it's very like super thinly veiled of like, oh yeah, it's great. I mean, even when she talks to a painter for one of the first times, and I think he's sort of explained, she's sort of explaining it, she like almost interrupts herself and she says, what does she say? She says, you may think, what does she say? I didn't write it down. She's like, something about like, you might think it's a burden or something, but it's actually an incredible honor. Something to that effect. I'm butchering it, but she was basically, again, explaining what it means to be chosen, and her with all like the ritual sleeping, the ritual eating, the ritual bathing, like all this stuff. And Painter's perspective, he comes from maybe a world that's kind of more akin to ours in terms of just like societally than ours. Obviously, we don't have nightmares walking around, or if we do, people are very good at keeping them under wraps. So to him, he's like, this sucks. Like, you don't like, again, initially it's like, oh, you get fed and you get, but like, everything seems to be laid out before you, and you have to do it to the dot, to the T. And again, you're basically not living your entire life. So when Yumi's explaining it, she's like, oh no, it's this is actually good. Like it's a huge honor, and I love it. Trust me, it is great. And it's like, oof, it doesn't really take a whole lot for someone to look at someone explaining their life like that and realize you don't like this. You might like some parts of it, but overall, I think you wish it was different. And I think she does say that at like the very, very, very end of our section here. I forget what she says, but oh yeah, she says, then we can both go back to our lives. Or like, Painter's like, I just want my life back. And in Yumi's head, she thinks, I don't. And it's like, oof, that's unfortunate. That is unfortunate. Let me see if there's anything else about their specific like thoughts on that and stuff. No, no. I think the only thing that's like sort of connected. I guess it is connected. I love, love, love the moment when Painter and Yumi are in the noodle shop and they're talking or whatever, and Painter realizes that he does not have it the worst. He realizes that Yumi is more alone than he is. That he doesn't even know what it means to be alone. Because again, like he's lived his life. He's a self-identified loner. Doesn't really have any friends. He chooses to do the nightmare painting by himself, which for the most part people tend to do it in pairs or in groups. More like socially or whatever. Seems to be somewhat ostracized from everybody. And he always thought that he was alone and his life kind of sucked and, whatever, right? Very gloomy, all that stuff. And then he looks at Yumi and it's like, she has it worse. Like, she's alone and it's not even possible for her to get close to anyone. Like, at least with Painter, if he made an attempt, if he put in some effort, he could try to maybe rekindle his friendship with his group of friends or maybe meet some new friends or whatever, right? Yumi can't even do that because of the position that she has, her station as she calls it. She can't do it. Like, she can't really have friends. She can't have relationships, certainly, because her whole life is planned out, like minute by minute. Her whole life is planned out. And they keep a very close eye on her. So it's like, man, I don't even, she, admittedly, she's not a person. She doesn't know how to be a person. Like, that is so far removed from lonely, you know. Um, I just really do love that because, I think one thing about their relationship is there's obviously a few moments here and there where they are at each other's necks. Both from what each other may be doing, it's justified, but it's also, a little bit of their own situation. They're upset at their own stuff that they got to deal with, and so they unfortunately have to release it. And each other are very, very close because they're literally tethered to each other. So the other one sort of gets the brunt of the other's frustrations, and vice versa. But I do love the small conversations that they're able to have where they do kind of get to know each other more, right? Like, I love when Akane was taking Yumi out for some clothes shopping. That whole scene, I guess, very wholesome, very nice. Akane seems like a great person. Even that's what Yumi said, where she's been very nice and helpful to her. And, so there's that aspect of it. But there's the small conversation they had when Yumi was like, why do you like Akane? And he's like, oh, because she's prettiest in the class or whatever. And she's like, yeah, I know that. But, like, I want to know why you specifically like her. And it took a few moments, but then Painter does start telling a story about how, he came here. He came here from a small town, and so people sort of made fun of him. He was sort of bullied, which unfortunately happens when you're a new kid in class. And Akane was the one to sort of be friendly to him and ask him, why did you want to be a painter? And, sort of show some sort of, I don't know, niceness towards him. It's like, oh, so like that's a very small thing. Maybe Akane doesn't even remember that. But to the person that was receiving that kindness, that's something you never forget. And so it is moments like that where, again, like it shows that these two can coexist. It's not just them having a common goal. Maybe these two could become friends in a way, but I think more so it allows Painter to sort of open up because of his personality and how he, holds himself. Again, with him being this like loner and like, ooh, what he's like, oh no, I kind of want to know what makes you tick. And this, more than anything, really, really, this matched with the noodle shop scene and us as the reader getting to meet all of his friends really, really, really makes me want to, and I'm sure we'll get it, maybe next part, really makes me want to see what happened between them. Because in other stories, we would immediately side with the main character and we would say, okay, well, clearly something bad happened. Clearly the friend group like turned on him or something, when in a situation in which if you were friends, you don't turn on your friends, or something like that. Some catalyst that caused his friends to show their true colors and they don't really like him, and we're the popular kids and we were just stringing you along. Something like that. Something that we've seen in stories a million times. But then we meet the friends and it's like, they don't seem like bad people. Like, they don't seem like evil people, or they don't seem like the typical, like, because he describes them as they're the popular kids. And so again, in a lot of stories, the majority of stories, the popular kids always are very, they're like sort of snobs. They think that they're above everyone else, and that is normally a part of the story. So them like bullying some other kids or whatever, right? But again, we meet them, we're like, they don't really seem that way. Even what was it? Torjin, whatever. The guy, he is initially, you could see him being painted as a stereotypical, like, meat-headed jock character that, maybe bullied Painter for a long time, and that's their relationship. But then you meet him and you're like, he doesn't really seem that way. He doesn't really seem super full of himself. He seems like he maybe has that air about him, maybe, makes jokes every now and again in that manner, but it doesn't seem like he's actually like that. It seems that he is very humbled by his friend group, as friends normally do. So yeah, I really want to know, because then that leads me to believe, I think it was a Painter thing. I think Painter pushed them away. I bet you there was a moment, some sort of life event, big or small, don't know yet, where he decided to push his friends away. Either because he felt like he didn't deserve them, or I don't know, something. I don't know if it's as self-sacrificing as that, but something like that. So I'm very, very eager to learn what happened. Put my pen down. Okay. What else do we have? Their relationship is really like meat and potatoes of this story. But what else do we have? Let's talk about the spirits wanting Yumi to free them. Wanted to offer Yumi a boon. Yumi was like, nah, well, how about you offer us a boon? Switched them. This is the other aspect too, right? Like them actually being connected. This is something that we want to remember, because it seemed like the spirits needed help, wanted Yumi to free them. What does that mean? That's something that we can't forget. That is the mission. We obviously have Painter side of things with the whole nightmare thing. I'm sure that'll come up. I'm sure we won't forget that. That'll come up, and the nightmare will turn out to be this big thing, and it might be one of the huge antagonists, maybe like a monster they have to defeat or whatever. But this all started with some spirits needing help, needing to be freed. Where are they caged up? Who has them? Are the spirits actually good? Maybe it turns out the spirits all this time were evil. That sort of goes to this whole thing in Yumi's world, which I was thinking, which is like, is what Yumi is doing right? We get small rewards, But do we know anything about these spirits? Again, I wasn't exactly thinking they were evil, but is the way of things, is this whole chosen thing, and every step that Yumi has to take every day of her life, is that actually necessary? You know, because even like me trying to help Yumi out, it's like, does she have to do all this ritual stuff? Or like when the time comes, if she just stacks the rocks in a nice enough way, is that good enough? You know what I mean? Like, do we need to bathe for, what was it, like 144 seconds or something, whatever that was? Like, is all that completely necessary? I don't know. But again, don't forget that. Spirits need help. I'm sure we'll readdress that in this one because they have to contact the spirits somehow. Them being connected, another thing. When they touch, it is overwhelming and exhausting. We've seen that time and time again, especially the effects of it, because it seems like they can only be up for a few hours, like 6 hours or so. Something about them switching takes a lot out of the person that was put there. So when they get to Painter's World, Yumi has like a countdown on her time before she just passes out, and vice versa. When they're on Yumi's world, Painter has only so much time. Yeah, I'm interested to see like what that means. Like if it is just a way to get them to switch, whether they want to or not. Whenever they do touch, it seems like it is evolving each time. Where like after the second or third time, they started to like share emotions, or not really share them, but like feel the other one's emotions, sort of stuff. So, I wonder if it'll evolve anywhere else, or I wonder if them being able to have any sort of powers like that, or just a very deep connection with each other, if that will be some sort of key to any of their problems. I don't know. Just something to pay attention to, I think. Foreman. The foreman didn't seem to believe Yumi regarding the stable nightmare. That's a problem. It does kind of all boil down to Painter's character and the perception that other characters have on him. Not only have we seen the foreman's opinion, but also Akane's as well. Like, ugh. I mean, obviously the whole like concubine thing didn't quite help, especially in the moment when someone hears something like that. I'm sure they're able, they're very much want to lash out. But, again, the perception of Painter is not great, so that didn't help the situation. Unfortunately, because of that, it could cause the stable nightmare to kill people. We haven't seen that yet. Because generally nightmares are not very dangerous because they catch them in more than enough time. I think he was like, as long as you get it within 10 days or so, they can't really do any harm for the most part. Yeah, I'm interested to see if that causes a ripple effect. I think it'd be kind of crazy to have nightmares be a thing in this book, and then us not see them get dangerous and see someone have to, fight it for real. So we'll see. I would like for Painter to be redeemed in some form or fashion. Obviously, that's not completely. Hold on. Give me a second. He is not completely absolved from this. Like, he has to do something. It's not just everyone else has a problem with him and they need to figure it out. He needs to figure it out. Let's see. I love this thing too, where seemingly, from what Design has said and what she seems to believe as well, it's Yumi's strong spiritual aspect that has allowed her to shape Painter's body to look like her own. Because that was a big thing for me when it was happening. We're like, okay, cool. Painter got summoned to her world. Interesting. He somehow kind of took over her body, and she's incorporeal. I'm going to deal with that. And then it flipped, and they got sent to his world, and immediately I thought, that's really cool for them to get pushed into each other's worlds, except if you're on your own world, you're incorporeal. You're the incorporeal one, and the other one looks like you. And then they flipped it, and Yumi actually looks like Yumi in Painter's world. What an insane thing to do. And I mean, at that point, we're all thinking like, well, why? How come it? How come it doesn't? It's not an exact 1-to-1 with each other's situations. And so for them to explain seems to be the spiritual aspect. It's like, oh, okay, cool. So she literally just like willed it to happen, where she is still in Painter's body, but it doesn't look like Painter because she is subconsciously using some sort of power that she has garnered from her years and years, her entire life of being connected with the spirits, just like the spiritual realm or whatever. That's cool. That's really interesting. So again, so many different little tidbits of magic and wonder, mostly magic, that have been introduced in this book, and it's like, cool. Where does it go from here? Like, how does that, like, are there more powers that Yumi has because of her, her like spiritual connection or whatever it is? Or is that the only thing? Is that, we're just going to see, oh, well, that, she's connected, so change her form or whatever. We'll see. Speaking of design, she is a spirit of some sort. So that's fun. Makes a lot of sense, right? We sort of think we inferred or something that she maybe was from another world. Well, I know she is because she arrived here with Hoid. We learned that them and Hoid were trying to learn more about the whole nightmare thing. We've never seen that before, so... but then Hoid got frozen immediately into a statue as soon as he got here, so now design is sort of stuck in sort of, doing this whole noodle shop thing. Yeah, so that's fun. She's a spirit. She's going to maybe look into it here and there to see if they can help or anything like that. Maybe hopefully try to get Hoid out, because that's a big thing. We obviously looked at Tress and her situation and how instrumental Hoid was in that story. So will Hoid be the one to save the day in this story as well? I don't know. We've seen how powerful he can be, even when he's not at his full potential, which he admitted himself. I don't know that I'd want to see another story where Hoid just saves the day again. Although I will say it wasn't completely Hoid. Like, Tress did a lot of work, like him, the crewmate and all that stuff. But with this, it's like, we'll see. We'll see. Again, we will see how instrumental he is in this one, because he was very important in the last one. Yeah. And then I guess we'll just end it with saying that they both agree that they are going to try their hardest to fix each other's problems as soon as possible. Yumi with the spiritual stuff, and Painter with the stable nightmare. We'll see how that works. Like I said, it is gearing towards Painter beating the nightmare, hopefully, and redeeming himself. Maybe this whole experience will make him look inside and make him be open again. I really want to see what happened to make him like this, and to push him away from his friends, all that stuff, and hopefully he can reconcile that. It's funny though, because on Yumi's side, it's like, oh, fix everything back to normal. It doesn't seem like she wants to go back. It seems like she very much does not like being a chosen. There are aspects of it that she is very, very honored to do, but it seems like she is very over it. Even early on in the book, before she ever met Painter and this whole thing happened, like, she didn't seem like she was very happy. It's got to be very monotonous to do not only to do the same thing every day, but also have it not be your choice. Like, everyone deciding your life for you. You're literally just a puppet for other people to use. Even your head servant doesn't really listen to you. Your head servant tells you what to do, So that's gotta be bad. So I wonder if it'll end up where Yumi does not go back. But we're not finishing the book next week, so we don't really have to think about end of story predictions, because next week we are continuing the book, chapters 18 through 30, otherwise known as part 3 of the novel. Because this time we covered part 1 and 2, because part 1 very short. So, and yeah, like I said, I'm very interested to see. I mean, I think next part, like I said, it's not going to be like end of story stuff because it is literally not the end of the story. But I don't know. I think they're going back to Yumi's world right now, so we're going to see maybe some training montages. I don't know how they're going to explain to the head servant, to uh, Leon, Leon, what's happening. They sort of have to make it so she will train them again. Although, like I said, I love that moment too because Yumi wants to tell Akane the truth or something. I don't remember. It's just like this whole battle of like telling the truth versus continuing to lie, which is better. They tried to tell Leon the truth, didn't work out, right? Well, to be fair, she didn't believe it, and Painter would have pushed harder and been like, no, you don't understand. But Yumi was like, no, don't do it. I think that's what they should have done from jump. I was like, just tell her, like, explain, like, you are not, like, it's not that, oh, lying is bad. It's like, if you lie, it's just going to make everything so much more complicated because now you have to pretend to be someone else that has years of experience in doing things that you do not. And both of you have to do it for each other. It's like, it just doesn't make sense. Like, you could have very easily, very easily could have convinced Leon that Painter is not Yumi. I think it would have been fairly easy, honestly. But and then like if you can convince him, then you have other people helping. It doesn't have to be just you two. Like I'm not saying we can like trust Leon with everything because she seems like she sucks in a sense, but like you would have her help, and then on Painter's side, you would have help there as well. Again, not very close to the friends, but like these are things that can happen. These things that can meld and come together. And I just feel like they're making it harder for themselves to be like Painter in Yumi's body, try to be Yumi and try to summon spirits. Crazy when it takes years of practice. And Yumi's side, it's like, oh, try to navigate this world when Painter's not even in it because he can't be in it because you look like Yumi. So now we have to sort of figure this out. So I don't know, we'll see. But that is it. Like I said, read the chapters for next week, 18 through 30. We'll get through the middle part of this book, and we'll see what happens. Very excited. Hopefully they can learn to work together, and hopefully they can just tell people and get others to help as well, because they need a lot of help, and they probably can't do this alone.